Hi everyone, welcome to the second webinar in our Atlassian in Scotland series. So I'm Nigel Rochford, CEO of Verve Consulting. We're based in Glasgow, Scotland, and in the true spirit of modern and remote working, I'm actually presenting to you today from Orkney. It's a beautiful archipelago off the north coast of Scotland, so if you've never been before, it's a good chance for a staycation to come up here. It's a beautiful place. So Verve is an Atlassian partner. We operate as part of a global channel partner network in collaboration with Atlassian. We build solutions for our customers here in Scotland and also the UK. And all of our solutions are implemented using products from the Atlassian ecosystem. One of our focus areas is, of course, IT Service Management, or ITSM, which is the theme for this particular webinar series. So our webinars will celebrate effective team working by showcasing Atlassian products and partner tools. Our ultimate goal is to share local customer success stories from here in Scotland and also product and solution insights. Hopefully from these sessions, everybody on the webinar will gain some kind of value from them. Today, I'm delighted to welcome two speakers to our lineup. First up will be Roman Jouravlev from Axelos, and shortly after we'll have our very own Kris Siwiec presenting from Verve. As you can see, we have a bit of an ITIL theme going on. There are, of course, lots of IT frameworks out there like ITIL that offer best practices and guidelines on how to implement IT service management. Today, though, we're focusing on ITIL and how its latest iteration can help transform IT teams and how they work. We'll start with theory first, with Roman walking us through recent changes in ITIL and how these changes enable IT teams to shift towards more collaborative, iterative, and customer-centric approaches. We'll then dip into the practical side, with Kris showing how Jira Service Desk can be used to put these changes into practice. If you'd like to ask any questions during the webinar, please post these into the Q&A dialogue. If you haven't used Zoom before, you should see a big Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We'll have a live Q&A session with both speakers at the end of the webinar, and we'll do our best to answer all your questions then. If you'd like to share insights from today's webinar, please do use our hashtag #TartanTeamwork, and you can mention us at Verve. So first up, we have Roman Jouravlev. Roman is an ITIL 4 lead architect responsible for ITIL continual development. Roman has worked for more than 15 years in ITSM, mostly in Russia, as a trainer, consultant, quality manager, and also a service desk manager. He's joined Axelos in 2016. In this session, you'll find out more about the new version of ITIL, introduced just over a year ago, and how it addresses the modern demands and challenges of IT teams.
Hi, my name is Roman Jouravlev. I work at Axelos and we develop ITIL. My position is ITSM Portfolio Development Manager, which basically means that if you don't like anything in ITIL 4, I'm the one to blame. If you do like something or everything in ITIL 4, there is a long list of contributors after every publication, whether it is a full-scale book or just a small white paper. And today I wanted to talk about ITIL 4 and its application in practice, and probably about the most practical part of ITIL 4, which is actually practice guides. You know that previous versions of ITIL were mostly based around some process model and the collection of processes. And these processes evolved to practices in ITIL 4. And this year we actually published the last batch of the practices. So all 34 practices are now available. And since it's probably the least known and at the same time the most practical, the most detailed part of the ITIL 4 as a collection of best practice guidance, this is exactly what I wanted to talk about today. Just to give you a very quick overview of the process timeline, of the development timeline. We released ITIL Foundation more than a year ago now, like a year and a half ago now, in February 2019. And this is where the concept of practices was described and presented first time. And in the actual foundation book, we just have a 1 to 2 page overview of each of the 34 practices. But the collection of practices and grouping of practices was introduced in that book. Now, in May 2018, so quite soon after publishing the foundation, we put together 4 practices. It was incident management, change enablement, which was called change control those days, problem management, and service level management. So the most popular, the most demanded practices based on the experience with previous versions of ITIL. And we started a public discussion of those. We arranged a group for public discussion on our website, and we had a lot of feedback to these 4 first drafts. And one of the results, the most probably visible result at the foundation level, is that after that discussion, the change control practice was eventually renamed into change enablement, and this is its current name. And then after that review, we took all that feedback on board and we continued developing the practices, but in parallel there was a development work for the managing professional level of the ITIL for publications. So 2 publications were published in November 2019. That was Create, Deliver, Support book, and it was the Direct, Plan and Improve book. And then in December 2019, we published 11 practices that supported the syllabuses for the above mentioned 2 books. So people could take exams and prepare for exams on that, on that 2 publications. The next 2 publications are accompanied with the 12 practices examined CT18. Seven practices left module that is yet to be published and will be published soon, and it's digital and IT strategy. So focusing on these blue dots on the timeline, there were 4 small releases of the practices, and they all have a lot in common, and I would like to share the most important information about these practices with you now. It was a result of work of an enormously talented and really very professional team, or to be precise, multiple small teams. These people on the slide, they are real contributors to the practice development, but I don't think that all of them ever met together. Because we had some authors for each practice and some reviewers for each practice, and some people acted as authors and or reviewers to multiple practices, but apart from probably some people at Axelos, nobody contributed to all of them. Nevertheless, totally, we worked with more than 50 authors and more than 100 reviewers, and we needed someone to lead, to rule, and to call them all. So we needed a lead editor, just like we had lead editors for all our main publications, our books. And the lead editor for the practices was Dinara Aderwai. She lives currently in Dublin. She lived in Sydney when we were working on most of the practices, and before moving to Sydney, she lived in her home, Kazakhstan. And I would like to use this opportunity and thank Dinara for this really valuable and huge contribution to the development. It wouldn't be possible without her. So 34 practices grouped into 3 groups. which we called general management practices, service management practices, and technical management practices. And this is a story to share, a very little one. Basically, we didn't want to group them at all. One of the reasons we moved the practices from the key books and we published them separately, among other reasons, is that we really didn't want to promote and stimulate this silo mentality that used to be very typical for our users of the previous versions of ITIL, and not in the least because ITIL architecture as a product provoked this grouping, provoked this functional grouping, and provoked this silo attitude. Like, change management belongs to service transition. Service level management belongs to service design only. And problem management belongs to service operation only. And this was replicated in many organizations in their organizational structure and created like very encapsulated beats of change management or problem management or you name it management, instead of using this practice across the full life cycle of organizations, products and services. So we really didn't want to provoke this silo mentality with yet another grouping. But at the same time, we understand that people will be studying this material and they will be teaching this material and they will be generally using this material, and a list of 34 anything, which together builds up to like 1,200 pages of content, is not really an easy to approach way to publish something. So we needed some reasonable grouping, and we grouped them, let's say, by their origins, by their pedigree. So the practices in the first group, general management practices, they are originating from, let's say, above IT general management. Organizations without any technologies still need some portfolio management, risk management, financial management, etc. The central group, the longest list on the slide, are practices that are traditionally known as service management practices, and some of them were originally introduced with and by ITIL. And we call them service management practices. And the three practices on the right are so-called technical management practices. These are practices that do exist in organizations, even if they don't have any service mindset, any service context. They still manage their infrastructure, they still develop and manage software and the applications, and they still deploy new bits of infrastructure and applications. So these three are actually were sort of elevated to the service context from a very technical, very component-focused context. But that being said, this grouping is not functional. You don't need to use it. Let me use this metaphor. If you go for, let's say, your weekly shopping to some supermarket, and probably you buy some grocery, you buy some non-food, you buy some frozen food, you buy some fruit and vegetables, it's unlikely, well, it's quite likely actually that you will put them in different bags. And when you bring all that stuff home, you will probably put them on different shelves and even like in different storage areas. So non-food will go in some cupboard, and your frozen food will probably go to the freezer, and your fruit and veg will go to wherever you store your fruit and veg. But this is definitely not the way you are going to use it. Like today we are eating vegetables, and once they are over, we will start eating frozen food. Usually people don't follow this routine, right? So this is a convenient way to store practices. This is a convenient way to study practices. This is not a way to apply them. This is important. Forget about grouping. All practices apply at pretty much every step of our product and service life cycle, and pretty much every activity of the service value chain are as described in ITIL. Many of these practices are actually new. The bold ones are new to ITIL, and the underlined ones like knowledge management, portfolio management, relationship management, strategy management, and service desk, by the way, which is important, are significantly updated. So same purpose, very similar positioning, but significant changes within compared to the previous versions. Those which are not underlined nor highlighted in bold are significantly based on what we had in version 3, but still the format and the way we describe them is different. And let me tell you a couple of words about the way we describe the practices. So all practices follow the same structure. It's about 30 to 40 pages each, and they follow the same structure of this way. So we have some general information which includes purpose and description, key terms and concepts, and scope, and so-called practice success factors and associated metrics. I will show some more in details in a couple of slides. Then we have a process focus section, an automation process section, and sourcing and supplies focus section, and roles and competencies focus section. So the next 4 sections, from process to sourcing and supplies, are actually structured around the 4 dimensions of service management, and in fact they are titled accordingly. I changed the words here in the slide, but in the actual documents it's processes and value streams, organization and people, information and technology, and partners and supplies, respectively, are for the 4 last bullets in this list. All these documents are available currently as PDFs to read or download. They are available in my Axelos subscription area. Subscription costs £50 plus VAT per year. And if you pass an ITIL exam, any ITIL exam, you get 100% discount for 1 year subscription, which you are more than welcome to use. And this is exactly what I would suggest to do to everyone who just accomplished some ITIL certification. So next step will be to read the appropriate practice. And now I would like to really quickly go through one of the practices. It is portfolio management, old and new. So old formally, but completely different. And just give you some illustrations of each of the areas that we just quickly listed. So key terms and concepts, and predictably for portfolio management, portfolio is one of the key terms. And the figure here, which I'm not going to go into details about, describes how we move different levels of portfolio when we make these decisions of how to invest what we have to achieve what we might achieve, what we are aiming to achieve. So we have money and we get resources. We get resources, we build products and services. We have products and services, we address customers' needs. We have customer relationship, we choose what value we can get from this. And this is how we expanded the concept of portfolio from service portfolio in version 3. Then after key terms and concepts, every practice has a collection, like a list of so-called practice success factors. 2, 3, or once 4, if I remember correctly. And we call them PSF, so practice success factors. And for the portfolio management, the 2 of those are actually listed at the end of the slide. Ensuring sound investment decisions for programs, projects, products, and services within the constraints that organization meets, and ensure continual monitoring, review, optimization of various organizations' portfolios. And if we do these 2 things, then we are likely to achieve or realize the purpose, which is to ensure that the organization has the right mix of programs, projects, products, and services to execute organization's strategy within its funding and resource constraints. These practice success factors are supported with key metrics in every practice. They are not KPIs. We don't provide any target values. We just highlight what is important to measure if you want to understand whether you realize the practice success factors. And if you realize practice success factors, then you are likely to achieve the purpose. And I missed one important thing. The current practices do not have any uniting model, general or unified model. But the practice success factors is something that can actually help to build an overall cross-practice capability model, because this is exactly what should be developed in order for the practices to be effective. The next section on processes And this is an answer to the quite common question of where all the processes have gone from ITIL 4. So they have not, and we have 2 to 4 processes in every practice. We tried to make them simple, clear, universally applicable, regardless of the specifics of this practice development in a specific organization. And for portfolio management, there are 2: managing organizations' approach to portfolios, or how we manage portfolios, and managing portfolios life cycles. There are very simple or straightforward workflow or models or schemes in a simplified BPMN format for one and for the other. And again, there is a development opportunity of building a cross-practice information architecture model that would connect all the inputs, outputs, and activities of all practices, more or less like we see it at certain levels in IT for IT, if you are familiar with the concept. The next one, roles and competencies. For every activity in every process, we describe what actually can be done, and then we described potential or possible roles to perform those activities. We don't, usually in ITIL 4, we don't suggest new roles, we just help to identify people who might be doing this in the organization. Then we support it with a competence profile, which may be a topic for another discussion and another presentation, and then a list of specific skills. Being combined from all the practices, these things actually provide an opportunity to find a cross-practice competence model. And finally, something that I wanted to bring in today and to highlight for the next step of our webinar today is that we, in a very similar way, we described every step, every activity of every process in every practice with some recommendations for automation. So means of automation as type of automation tools, not specific tools, key functionality that helps to perform specific activities, and how large is the impact of this automation on the effectiveness of the practice. These tables from each practice can be used in 2 ways. A, they can be served or used as like universal recommendations or source of universal recommendations on choosing a tool set. And B, they can be used to assess the capabilities of the existing tool sets and to find the gaps and to see what can be developed. I will skip the the supplies and partners chapter for now, but this is organized in a very similar way, basically. But what I don't want to skip is that every practice is actually concluded, every practice guide is concluded with a reminder to follow these 7 guiding principles that are suggested by ITIL. Focus on value when you develop your practice and automate it. Start where you are, considering what you've got at the starting point. Don't remove all your previous experience. Progress iteratively and keep collecting and addressing feedback with every iteration. Keep it visible, keep it transparent, collaborate as you go forward with your practices and their automation. Keep a holistic picture in your mind and think and work holistically, which is very close to focusing on value. Keep it simple and practical, optimize before automating, and if you follow all this, it's likely that you will succeed in developing the key capabilities of your organization, developing the practices and applying them, and also in automating them. This was basically all I wanted to share with you today about the ITIL 4 practices and how they are structured and how they can be applied. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to answering your questions. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Roman. A reminder that if any of you have questions for Roman, please fire them across via the Zoom Q&A, and he'll try his best to answer them for you in our live Q&A slot at the end of the webinar. So next up we have Kris Siwiec from New Verve. Kris joined the team in 2015 as employee number 2. In other words, we effectively doubled our team size. Our very first client project as an Atlassian solution partner kicked off back in 2016, and that involved rolling out a complex service desk using Atlassian tools. The target was, for that solution to serve over 1,000 users. Kris spearheaded most of that work using Jira Service Desk, and a range of automation and configuration management solutions as well. So we use Script Runner and Insight for the CMDB. That particular project didn't involve ITIL, but many of our solutions were spawned from the classic process flows for change management, incident management, and request management. Ultimately, the solution was striving to be flexible and adaptable, and it's still evolving today with our support. So since those early days on that first project at New Verve, Kris has progressed through various roles and is now our technical lead. As technical lead, one of Kris's responsibilities is to design and architect highly scalable Atlassian solutions for our customers. These span many disciplines, including DevOps, PPM, and of course ITSM. Keeping the ITIL theme for this webinar, Kris is going to dive more into the practical side and will show you examples of how to integrate ITIL's guiding principles into your ITSM practice, building on the ITIL certified Jira Service Desk cloud platform.
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. So as advertised, I am Kris at New Verve, and today I'll be talking to you about how to get the most out of ITIL with Jira Service Desk. So we'll be starting off the session by reviewing ITIL's guiding principles, and we'll then try and translate them into platform capabilities. After that, we'll be selecting the tools that can deliver to those capabilities, and finally we'll demonstrate some of them through practical examples. Now, this is not going to be an advanced session, so we won't be digging too deep into theory or configuration. But what we do want to do is to demonstrate to you what kind of ITSM practice can be achieved by combining ITIL theory with Jira Service Desk. So let's dive straight in. So what are ITIL's principles? Now, ITIL outlines 7 guiding principles, and they can be used to guide an organization in all circumstances. And that's regardless of changes in its goals, strategies, type of work, or even management structure. And these principles themselves, they're not new, but they're now front and center in ITIL 4, which was released just last year. Now, ITIL 4 puts more focus on things like customer experience and value streams and digital transformation. But it also embraces modern ways of working like Agile and DevOps. Importantly, it also takes a more agnostic approach, and it does that by prioritizing on value stream mapping rather than being about step-by-step process implementation. So the 7 ITIL guiding principles are: focus on value, start where you are, progress iteratively with feedback, collaborate and promote visibility, think and work holistically, keep it simple and practical, and optimize and automate. And typically these principles, they're represented as a kind of self-reinforcing circle. Now, we're IT people, so we love to represent everything as a cycle. But let's not forget that this particular cycle, that it starts and ends with value. And let's remember these words from Mark Schwartz, that any IT leader that focuses on demonstrating value, they're simply wasting company resources, because IT leaders should direct all their focus to delivering value. So, as you would expect, there is another popular representation of these principles that has 6 of them revolving around value. And that is a lesson learned from Agile and DevOps, which have this inherent focus on value stream-driven delivery. So, now that we know what those principles are, what do we do with them? Well, we want to turn those principles into capabilities. So let's look at it this way. What does a technical architect need from their tools to put these principles into play? And again, we're going to start with value, because this is the big one. Because everything that we do needs to map, directly or indirectly, to value for our stakeholders. Because value represents our stakeholders' interests. So it really should be the driver, both for our change management, but also for our business as usual. So what do we need from our technologies to ensure that we can focus on value at all times? Well, we obviously need to understand our stakeholders. But that's not just about having a CRM system, it's also about ensuring that they get to tell us what they think, for example, through a customer satisfaction channel. And we also want to be able to safeguard their interests, and we'll do that by ensuring that our tools support a review and approval process. And finally, because we're focusing on value, we want to make sure that we avoid duplication. And that brings us to the second principle, which is to start where you are rather than starting from scratch or reinventing the wheel. And to do that, we need to understand the landscape that we're in. So this means maintaining the organization's body of knowledge, using something like a knowledge base or a CRM system, or even a configuration management database. But it also means measuring and learning as we go, for example, through business intelligence and data warehousing capabilities, so that we can identify pain points and opportunities. Because the more knowledge we have, the better our value propositions will be. But how do we handle change itself? Well, we do it by progressing iteratively with feedback. So, in other words, we embrace Agile. And this means that we're not trying to do everything at once. It means that we're working in Scrum and Kanban, and releasing early and often through continuous integration and delivery. But it also means that we're recording our outcomes and learning from them. And all of this goes back to value because we want to deliver it as early as possible. And now that we're doing Agile, we also have much better collaboration and better visibility in our change process, thanks to, for example, project boards. But what about other areas? Well, we'll definitely want a queuing system for our service and incident management. We'll want service level agreements and on-call capabilities so that we can respond early and often. But we also want to shorten the path to the customer by enabling self-service and by leveraging all available communication channels. Now, thinking and working holistically, that one is also about visibility, but it's more strategic rather than tactical. And it goes back to understanding the landscape that we're in, because we want to be able to map out our dependencies and our interfaces across both our teams and technologies so that we can understand the effect of change and assess risk. And we can do that through knowledge and configuration management. But we can also do it through automated deployment and testing and impact analysis. Now, ITIL tells us to keep it simple and practical, but how do we do that given all these capabilities that we're after? Now remember that we want to avoid starting from scratch. So we'll want our technologies to be easily available, like off the shelf or open source. And we want it to be plug and play, so ideally also managed by someone else. So what we need is a platform that is not too complex, but that is expressive and scalable so it can grow with us. And last but not least, we need this platform to help us make people's lives easier. So we want things like access to templates or an automation engine. But we also want all the benefits from having an API, such as extensions and integrations. So now that we're done with theory, what does all of this mean in practice? Well, ultimately, we want to choose the tools that will empower us. And Atlassian has long been a leader in both DevOps and ITSM, so it's no surprise that synergizing between those two disciplines, it was a hot topic at last year's Atlassian Summit. So, can DevOps and ITSM be best friends forever? Well, according to Jane Grohl, yeah, they can. Because DevOps, it does not in and of itself have a single body of knowledge. So not only does it actually support Agile, Lean, and ITSM, but it also actually takes ITIL and ITSM to the next level. With that in mind, why don't we compare Atlassian's approach to DevOps and ITSM? So what you see here is Atlassian's representation of the DevOps lifecycle. Now, let's see how Atlassian's tooling enables and supports this at each step. And the steps we see here are plan, build, integrate, deploy, operate, and feedback. And now let's compare that with Atlassian's approach to ITSM. Now, you'll notice that there are certain similarities between this diagram and the one before it. The steps we see here are plan, build, deliver, operate, and support. And we also have a subset of the same products popping up here. And all of these are available as part of Atlassian's managed service offering, which is the Atlassian Cloud. Now, there's of course more tools in the Atlassian ecosystem, but the above combination is particularly suited to ITSM. And if we look at the following diagram, it suddenly becomes very clear how Atlassian supports all these capabilities that we're after. We have Jira Service Desk here, which is ITIL certified across request fulfillment and incident problem and change management. We have Confluence, which gives us centralized knowledge management. We have Jira Software and Bitbucket, which give us Agile and DevOps for our change and project management. And we have Opsgenie and Status Page, which give us DevOps for our incident and problem management. And all these apps are also vertically and horizontally integrated. And if that's not enough, then there's the Atlassian Marketplace, and that provides a ton of apps and integrations on top of the base functionality. There's no one size fits all, but there's something for all sizes. So with all that in mind, we're now going to do a demo. And we'll be taking a look at a couple of flows. The first one is incident management, featuring Jira Service Desk, Opsgenie, Status Page, and a brief appearance from Confluence. And the second one is change management, featuring also Jira Service Desk, but also Jira Software, Bitbucket, and a guest appearance from Crumbs. And it's not that service fulfillment and problem management are not interesting in themselves, but the flows that we've picked, they're particularly good at demonstrating the capabilities that we're after, as well as the cross-integration between the different Atlassian products. Now, I'm going to be turning my camera off for this part because you'll be seeing my avatar most of the time anyway, and one of me is probably more than enough. So a quick bit of housekeeping before we start. On the 1st of April this year, Atlassian announced early access to new ITSM features in Jira Service Desk. And this is not an April Fool's joke. All the features are available if you access the specified URL in your own Atlassian site, and we would encourage everyone to give them a whirl. The new features introduced an additional IT service management project template, which includes new navigation and dedicated queues for service, incident, problem and change requests. The biggest updates are the addition of a service registry, which allows us to build a hierarchical view of our technological stack, and we'll see this in the change management demo. The addition of a change management process by integrating the service registry with Bitbucket, so that any code change that is deployed against those services is tracked as change requests. And the addition of an incident escalation process by integrating with Opsgenie, so that Opsgenie incidents can be created directly from Jira, and we'll see this in the incident management demo. So with that out of the way, let's get on with the actual demo. In the first demo, we'll walk through an example of incident management. In this example, we are integrating Jira Service Desk with Confluence, Status Page, and Opsgenie. This allows us to optimize and automate across the three applications, as well as collaborating and promoting visibility. We are also keeping things simple and practical. All the integrations are off the shelf and plug and play. Let's imagine that a customer cannot access this public website of ours. The customer will then, of course, head over to our status page just to make sure that this has not already been reported. And seeing that it hasn't, our customer will then go to the Service Desk support portal and raise an incident ticket. Let's report this as a system problem. Now, notice that as the customer begins typing up the summary, a knowledge base article suggestion pops up. And this contains very helpful instructions on what to do. So once we've sent in our customer satisfaction feedback, we will continue raising the incident ticket as instructed. Now, once that ticket is raised, a couple of things will happen automatically. Firstly, the status page will be updated to indicate a possible issue. Secondly, that page status will be reflected in a public banner on the support portal itself. And thirdly, an Opsgenie alert will be generated, and our second-line support team will be notified of the issue. Now, note that our first-line support team can still interact with the Jira ticket as normal. For example, they can create a major incident to escalate the issue to third-line support. However, given that the second-line support team is already working on the issue, the first-line team can spend their time elsewhere. This brings the team and the wider business immediate value. Now, every time the alert is updated in Opsgenie, that information propagates both to Jira and status page. This gives our customer the opportunity to respond at each step, ensuring that we progress iteratively with feedback. We can also use specific tags to update the service status. For example, this tag will update status page to indicate an outage. Let's take a look at status page. You'll notice that all of the updates from Opsgenie are coming through here, both as the website status and also as an acknowledgement. The same is true of Jira Service Desk. Now, going back to Opsgenie, once the alert is closed, the corresponding Jira ticket is resolved automatically and the status page returns to normal. Let's have a look at status page again. All systems are operational. And our request is now marked as completed with no public banner visible. Now the added bonus here is that this chain of events could have also been triggered from status page, for example by a monitoring tool, or from Opsgenie by the second line support team themselves. In all cases, the information propagates across all three systems until the incident is resolved. In the second demo, we'll walk through an example of change management. Here we're integrating Jira Service Desk with Jira Software, Bitbucket and Cronus. This again allows us to optimize and automate across these applications, as well as collaborating and promoting visibility. We're keeping things simple and practical, and as before, all the integrations are off the shelf and plug and play. But as this is a change scenario, let's think and work holistically, and let's begin by understanding our technological landscape. And to do so, we'll take advantage of Jira Service Desk's new service registry capability. Now we have built it out for the purpose of this demo with a number of codependent services. The service that we'll be looking at today is the public website. And you'll see that this is a tier 1 service with a number of tier 1 interdependencies, so it's pretty important. It has a change advisory group assigned to it called business users, and that means that any non-critical change requests that are raised against this service must be approved by members of that group. And it is also linked to a Bitbucket code repository. Let's click into that. And this repository, it houses all the code for the basic website that we showed you at the beginning of the first demo. I'll just quickly switch to that so we can refresh your memory. This is it, it's very simple. But what it also has is a continuous deployment pipeline. And the pipeline deploys the website code into a virtual staging environment every time a new code change is committed to the repository. Now you might ask, why is it useful having this link between the public website service from Jira Service Desk into this Bitbucket repository? And to understand the benefit of that, we need to explore the new change management project settings in Jira Service Desk. Now these settings allow us to record any deployments that are made by our Bitbucket pipeline for specific types of environment. For example, development, staging, testing, for the service that we're interested in, which is the public service. When the pipeline deploys the website code into any of those environments, then a new change request ticket will be created inside the service desk. And this ticket will then be automatically triaged by a dedicated project automation rule. You can see it here under the change management label. Now, this rule, it will perform various actions. So it will do basic risk management, it will do some gating control, and it will even determine whether this is a standard or a normal or emergency change. But for the purpose of this demo, the rule will also do one more thing, which is to share the ticket with a specific Jira Service Desk organization. In this case, it's called Atlassian. To notify all customer users within that organization that a deployment has taken place. And this is because we know from our CRM that this organization must be included in all change management activities. And this is where Crumbs comes into play. So Crumbs, which lives here, is a lightweight CRM app for Jira Cloud made by Verve. It has a very simple, basic, and pleasing interface, and it allows us to create customer entries with additional metadata. But what it also does is it integrates with Jira Service Desk by matching on the customer name here and the organization's name within Service Desk. When that happens, it marks that fact by this little Jira Service Desk icon here. Now we can click into the customer that we're interested in, Atlassian, and we can see in all this metadata that we've recorded here, Atlassian being the most valuable player on our website, they must be included in all change management activities. So let's run through the following scenario. Now, for reasons that are not important, our development team, who live in Jira Software, have decided that a Service Desk widget on the public website is an absolute must-have. And they've already created on the Kanban board, Scrum board, a critical user story, and they're fast-tracking it through the Jira Software development cycle. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to project settings and grab that widget code and commit it into the code repository to simulate that user story is getting completed. We just need to grab it from here, go to the repository, click into the index file for the website and just edit it. And we'll add it here at the end. We'll commit it, and just to make sure that we're integrating with Jira Software, we'll use this ID of the user story here. So it's web 39 added widget. And we'll commit it straight into the repository. Now, as we're doing that, the automated deployment pipeline is already kicking off. And that code that we've committed on this ticket is going to be deployed into the staging environment. We can see that commit here through the Jira Software and Bitbucket integration visible on the user story. But also, our change management process is now creating a change request ticket and automatically triaging it to completion. So let's go back to our Service Desk project and have a look at the change tickets. And we can see it here, ITSM 39. So this is a new deployment for the website Bitbucket repository to a staging environment, and it's already been marked as completed. So this was a critical change request which has been auto-triaged to completion. And if we click into that, we'll see that in the spirit of collaboration and visibility, that ticket has also been shared with the Atlassian organization. So the Atlassian stakeholders can review it and update us with their feedback on the website. We can also see that the Crumbs integration is working for us here. So clicking into this Crumbs icon here, we see more contextual information about the Atlassian customer. And just to take it back to the website that we've deployed the changes to, if we refresh it now, we can see that the widget is indeed operating here, and we can now raise requests from our public website. And that's it for today from me. So I hope you enjoyed both of these demos and they gave you a glimpse of how to get the most out of ITIL with Jira Service Desk. We would encourage you to experiment with these new ITSM capabilities by creating a free development site and enabling the early access IT service management project template. Now, if you have any questions or if you'd be interested in a solution demo, feel free to reach out to us after the webinar. Cheers!
Thanks, Kris. So hopefully you've all gained some useful tips that can help you on your ITSM journey with Atlassian. So next up, we're going to do our live Q&A session. So we've got a range of questions that have come in, over the two talks, and we'll do our best now to try and answer some of those questions. Okay, so we're just going to ask some of these questions now. So I'll just double check that Roman and Kris, that you can both hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll maybe start with a question for you, Roman. So ITIL consists of many practices, so there's 34 of those, many of which were updated obviously in ITIL 4. In the second part of your presentation, you went through portfolio management, one of the general management practices, in a bit more detail. Just wondering why you chose this topic rather than one of the service management practices.
Oh, that's a fair question. In principle, that could be any of the 34 because they are structured in exactly the same way. So it could be any. But I thought it would be useful to take one of, let's say, less obvious practices from this default ITSM related set of incident, problem, change, service level management and the like, to illustrate these things. First, this is one of the practices that have been significantly updated with ITIL 4, and if you are familiar with the previous versions, then you could see that there is a quite important difference between old good service portfolio management in version 3 and the portfolio management version 4. It's more universal, it's less focused on operational level, it's less focused on just service portfolio and expands the concept of portfolio wider. So this is just a good illustration of how we developed the practices that have been presented by ITIL previously, but have been evolving since then. And another reason for using this one is that it also illustrates how topics like portfolio management or risk management become more important and more covered by both our sources of good practice, such as ITIL, and automation suites, such as this family of products offered by Atlassian. Because we all see that people keep thinking of ITIL as of just a guide on the incident management and of ITSM tools as just of workflow engines plus CMDB, and this is not correct. This is not full view of this. So I believe portfolio management was quite a good illustration of our ITSM beyond support or beyond operation. That was the reason.
Great. No, that makes sense, and yeah, I agree as well with the choice. I thought it was a good one. I've got another quick question for you, Roman. So what would your advice be for a team starting to implement ITIL for the very first time?
Don't implement ITIL. I mean, that really would be my advice. Don't implement ITIL. Just follow the guiding principles, focus on value, start where you are, progress iteratively, and other guiding principles as well. Solve your questions, address your issues. And if ITIL is relevant and helpful, then start with ITIL Foundation. And after you understand the key concepts, go for the practices. And then, if needed, you can proceed to the next levels of managing professional. But don't start with implementing ITIL. It never should be an objective on its own. It's just a means to address certain objectives and certain tasks that you have at your hands. That's very important.
Yeah. No, I think we'd mirror that as well from New Verve, just from our own experience. It's very meant to be just kind of meant to be there for guiding principles, and it's important to be flexible.
Exactly. Especially in these times when lack of flexibility actually leads almost guaranteed to lead you to a failure.
Yeah,
exactly. You need to readjust, to readapt, to remain flexible and I dare say agile all the time.
Yeah. Okay, great. Quick question for Kris. So if you had to highlight a single piece of advice from your experience to customers wishing to implement ITIL 4 practices with Atlassian tools, what would that be?
That's a very good question. I think it has a lot in common with the previous question that Roman answered. I'll probably echo Roman's words where he says, don't do it, but if you do have to do it, then remember the ITIL principles. And I think the single piece of advice that I would give is to start small. To start where you are, to quote the principles. And keep in mind the flexibility that ITIL offers you, because it's written in a way that discourages, prescriptive interpretations that will result in bureaucracies. Start small. Atlassian tools are great at this. You can do that and then let it grow with you. So use the service desk project templates, use the out-of-the-box features, and see how far that gets you. And once you're ready for that, build on it with either apps or integrations, etc. But start small would be what I would suggest.
Great, thanks, Kris. So we've got a few more questions before we wrap up the Q&A session. So another one for you, Kris. So ITIL 4 encourages teams to shift left by bringing issue resolution as close to the customer as possible. You touched on Confluence in the presentation as a self-serve knowledge base. The ideal is level 0 support, potentially with the help of machine learning. So this person's just wondering if Confluence supports this.
That's a very good question, actually. So yes, it does. Through the integration with Jira Service Desk, Atlassian offer a piece of machine learning that is built into the tool stack. It's called Smart Graph, and it's like a hybrid algorithm, and it combines keyword search and machine learning, so it can provide better search results ultimately. So when you're searching for your knowledge base articles, they will be informed by what was searched for before. You can look for the Smart Graph article from Atlassian if you'd like more details. It's available for you to review. If you're interested in a little bit more than that, you can also have a look at something called the Tone Analyzer from.
So I think we've just lost audio there. I'm not sure if it's an issue on my side or Kris's side. Roman, are you still there?
I am actually, yes.
Okay. So I think we've potentially lost Kris there, but we can come back to that question and maybe post some insights on that as a follow-up to the website. I guess, well, we've got one more question actually, which I was going to ask both of you. So it's important for a business to identify the right tools and processes for their needs. So Roman, do you have any insights or advice on how to establish the right team culture?
Well, yes, but definitely, well, I would say it would be a topic for another webinar or probably a 3-day training. Yes, to be as short as possible, culture is a very important topic addressed with ITIL 4. We really try to move away from just pure process focusing. So we introduced this concept of the 4 dimensions of service management, which include organization and people, and this is exactly where the cultural aspect is addressed, and our value stream and processes, and information and technology, and partners and suppliers, as I briefly mentioned in the presentation. So the organization and people one is really focused on culture. Specifically, if you have access to the practices, have a look at workforce and talent management. It's a new practice. We haven't had anything like that in version 3, and that is really the culture-focused and values-focused practice. It's not only about organizational structures and headcount. So I would recommend to look at that, and relationship management is another one. Oh yes, and of course organizational change management. So yes, we did address it. We have an insight. Look at the practices, or just contact us with any more specific questions.
Yeah, okay, great. So Kris has actually just messaged me to say he's back. So Kris, can you hear us okay?
Yep, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect, okay. So there's just one final question before we move on. So I'll ask that to you, Kris. So are traditional metrics such as mean resolution times still relevant in your opinion, or should we be looking at OKRs instead? And also, how do they manifest themselves inside the tools?
I think it's important to recognize that this is not an either or. So KPIs that you're mentioning, they're useful, they're as useful as ever for setting and meeting internal objectives. And you can track your KPIs just using the built-in reporting facilities and review them on an ongoing basis in the Jira Service Desk reporting tools. OKRs, they're more about helping us capture our business or customer outcomes. And if you're doing that, then you should really capture them as a kind of more permanent record, for example, as a Confluence page. And your OKRs will typically follow a longer-term life cycle. In fact, some organizations even include them in their internal PPM activities, and they track them with dedicated Jira core or software tickets. So I think in terms of how they're reflected in the tools, that would be my suggestion.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's really useful. Thanks for that. Okay. So unfortunately, I think we are running tight on time. So I'll wrap up the Q&A there, and we'll finish off the webinar. So thanks both Kris and Roman.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you.
So that's us coming to the end of today's webinar. Massive thank you to everybody for joining today. I know it's quite difficult sometimes to squeeze these things in with busy schedules. So yeah, massive thank you to everyone that's joined, but also our speakers especially as well. So Roman from Axelos and also Kris from New Verve. Thanks also to Atlassian for partnering with us for this webinar series. There are, of course, a multitude of products in the Atlassian ecosystem that can be used for ITSM. We couldn't touch on all of these today. Of course, we've spoken about some of those. But if you'd like to find out more about any of the products listed here on the slide, or if you'd like to just have a chat about any solutions in general using Atlassian tools, please do get in touch with us and we can arrange some demos. Here's our contact details if you'd like to get in touch. If you're keen to be involved in one of our future events and maybe present your own customer success story, we'd love to hear from you. Keep your eyes peeled for the next webinar. Best way to do this is probably via our website, where you can sign up to our newsletter. So yeah, so that's it for today. Big thank you again to everybody, and we'll see you at the next event. Cheers.